Sup brahs, this is Megashawn45 here, and in this video, I have some news to tell you, though most of you might not miss it. I am most likely not gonna do Combine Rampage Conclusion. Oh, such a tragedy! Oh, missing out on a whole nother season of mega shooting NPCs and having a bunch of text in the screen be the only dialogue and story that's shown. Oh, what are we gonna do? Well, I'll save you the trouble of all that. Mainly because the development of the final season might not be worth the trouble, especially for the last few chapters of it, which is me kind of biting off more than I can chew in terms of maps and such and graphics, you know. It might seem just way too much. Combine Rampage isn't even my most popular series on the channel anyway. But there was a story involved with Combine Rampage, and I wish to tell the entire story to you within 3 videos. This is Act 1 right here. Since it's going to be pretty long, I'm only going to discuss the first 6 chapters to all of you for now. Now, I might recycle these concepts in some of my future content, so I'll save them, but let me tell you them in terms of how I was gonna do Combine Rampage, how I was gonna finish the series. And I'm going to talk to you about it right now. At least the first 6 chapters. The first act. Now, I planned on having some voice actors help me out, so there wouldn't be just text on the screen anymore. Cutscenes were going to be used in Source Filmmaker. And for most of the series, we would be playing as Master Chief, of course. Following him are 4 of the main rebels that change from time to time. He usually has rebels that follow him around because since we're mostly following Chief, I still want to have the other characters have enough spotlight. Can't just let them go to waste, so... For example, one time we have Glenn, Owen, Jonathan, and Vincent following him. And then another time we have Michelle, Rachel, Marco, and Father Anders following them. Sometimes Arbiter comes along, and for a part of the story where Master Chief separates from everyone else, we play as Arbiter. Sometimes we change into the other rebel characters, helping Chief and Arbiter how in a situation that one of them can't do because they're out of reach. So we get the chance to play as everyone. Just a majority of the time we play as Chief. You know, I sometimes regret even putting Chief and Arbiter in the first place, but he's already in there. I can't just throw him out just like that. It's gonna have some continuity errors and such. The switching between the characters is like GTA 5, you know? Maybe in a different part of the map, Arbiter's having trouble, so we play as him and his point of view. Oh yeah, and I haven't forgotten about the High Council guys. Chancellor David, Justin, Jenkins, Cipriani, and the rest. Certain times we'd be in their point of view too, and they'd be playing a major part of the series. Also, everyone has their own set of weapons. And they pretty much carry only 2 at a time, but the characters can change their weapons from time to time at an ammo vending machine from BioShock, which suddenly appears in random places throughout the series. And like before, the music in the series is from other games, Halo's 3 and Reach mostly, some from Halo 2, and probably just a couple from Halo 1, some Doom here and there, but to keep from hearing the same music too much. Some of the music also comes from the Doom WODs that I love to play, sometimes I just listen to the songs themselves because they're awesome. From the WODs TNT Evolution and Icarus Alien Vanguard. There's also every song from Quake 2, including some of the bonus songs I never used yet, such as the ones that get listened to in the expansion, such as The Reckoning and Ground Zero. And of course there's the Unreal Tournament music, and the occasional song from a bonus game. Throughout the fighting in the game, there's the shooting mostly, but like in the new Doom game, there would have been glory kills, with Chief ripping off a head crab off a zombie's head and squishes it between his hands. Chief would also have a large selection of his weapons from Halo. A lot that I found in the workshop I thought would have came in handy if I was to continue the series. There would be the assault rifle, magnum, SMG, battle rifle, sniper rifle, rocket launcher, and Arbiter's got his weapons too. Plasma pistol, plasma rifle, carbine, and his trusty energy sword. Can't be Arbiter without that. Wasn't it kind of weird to have Arbiter be in the first Combine Rampage episodes, not using his energy sword, only using like the HMG from HL2 Beta? Yeah, that was pretty weird, wasn't it? Like seriously, where would Arbiter be without it? And the rest of the Rebel characters would either use their standard HL2 weapons or Counter-Strike weapons. New power-ups and weapons get unlocked from time to time in the game, but slowly. Like, Chief wouldn't get his rocket launcher until his first Strider battle in Chapter 4. The enemies in this game are mostly Combines, including the beta variants like Assassins, Guards, Cremators. There's the Xenians, like the Hound Eyes, Head Crabs. Some beta variants of them too, like the Panther Eye. Antlines are also around. Until the Arctic regions, it's ice antlines that take its place. And of course, finally, we have Race X that comes back, including Shock Troopers, Pitworms, and even the Gene Worm itself. The final boss from opposing force, who didn't really actually die, but it's now blind though because of Shepard. It went back into its portal. But Race X is coming back, and more dangerous than ever, including new monsters on their sides. I'll get more into that later, though. Alright, so now we get into the story. So the story starts off with a recap told by Glenn, who was going to be voiced by me. Here's the script for it, so I'll say it to you in his voice. It's been 10 years since the Combines have attacked Earth. 7 hours it took. 7 hours for them to take what is ours. The whole alien race, the whole army, have taken everything from us by surprise with gunships, giant tripods, smaller tripods, flying zapping aliens, and even some huge alien cruisers that came out of the portal and destroyed our civilizations within seconds. With huge casualties on our side, and very minor casualties on their end. Fortunately, before it was too late, Black Mesa's administrator, Dr. Breen, has reasoned with the leaders of the operation, the Combine Wizards. With Breen's reasoning, the Earth's governments and the Wizards of Hope, Strength, and Energy, Earth has surrendered. But not before the army was able to take down the Wizard of Energy, and after that, the Wizard of Feelings has taken his place. And so, the Combines have taken over our world, treating us like prisoners. The Wizards have used their time as leaders to research our species. Even though it seemed as if Dr. Breen was our leader, he was just a pawn to the Wizards' plans. However, during the years of imprisonment, the Resistance was formed. Humans and other aliens that were trapped on Earth, the Xenians, have teamed up in hopes of taking down the Combine Overwatch and bring an end to the Wizards' plans and their tyranny once and for all. That's when the Wizard Slayers came together in hopes of bringing down the 3 Combine Wizards. Robert, the Russian technician, was within the Wizard Slayers. Patrick, our bold leader, that's possibly a zombie. Glenn, that's me, the good-looking one. Owen, a funny weirdo. Vincent, Mr. Chow Mein. Jonathan, the Metal Gear Solid addict. Rachel, the girl. Michelle, the group whore. Marco, the influence of the streets. And Black Guy, uncalled for dog. Griggs and Sheckley, the brothers who always argue. Laura, the other girl. Father Anders, the child molester. And then we have our rip-offs. Master Chief, Cortana, and the Arbiter. They claim to have taken from the universe and brought here, but I think that's a load of bologna. Video game characters aren't real. They're probably just cosplayers. But anyway, we all have teamed up and have taken down the Wizards of Strength and Feelings. However, the Wizard of Hope was able to make his escape before the Citadel exploded, and the Combines were left in disarray, as when the Combine advisors decided to take over the operation. But the Wizards had some power of their own to do their biddings. The Wizard and High Council, led by Chancellor David, and High Generals Ivan, Justin, Maxwell, Cipriani, and Jenkins. We have had a load of adventures along the way, fought the big fights and whatnot, but today, we shall reach our conclusion to our big Combine slaying adventure. For the only way to win this war is to wreak havoc and cause Rampage. And that's when the Combine Rampage conclusion logo pops up. And that video serves as a prologue, basically. The next video is Chapter 1, White Forest. The Halo 3 song Luck comes on as the screen faces the mountain we keep seeing in HL2 Episode 2, as the beginning credits show up. After the title, as rebels get started packing to move on, we have a conversation with Griggs and Sheckley. Then Vincent, Jonathan, and Rachel show up, and Master Chief and Arbiter, then Jimmu the Gargantua, to reintroduce the fact that the Xenians are on the human side. Afterwards, Owen shows up to tell the others that a briefing is about to start. They all go to the briefing room where they meet up with Marco, Michelle, Laura, Father Anders, Robert, Glenn, Patrick, and Cortana in the base's AI. All the characters start talking to each other, and then Patrick and Cortana start discussing with everyone the next stage of their plan. The Wizard Slayers are not finished yet, because they need to take the fight to the Wizard of Hope before their job is done. But the Wizard of Hope has escaped Earth, and by the help of getting info from the Xenians and a captured scanner, reference, the Wizard of Hope has fled back to the Wizard's homeworld, one of the many alien planets the Combines have taken control of, just before the Citadel's reactor exploded. Because of the explosion, Combine portals have been disconnected from their homeworld, which means the only way back is by using a Combine cruiser. But not just any cruiser, the Icarus. The cruiser has been taken in orbit away from the fight. The Wizard and High Council is preparing the ship to return to the Wizard's homeworld to pick the Wizard of Hope up, and the new wizards that'll take the Wizards of Strength and Feelings' place. This is when things start to get interesting. Remember the artifacts that the Wizard Slayers collected throughout the series? Glenn got one in Chapter 3, then in Chapter 12, and then the other two after the battles with the Wizard of Strength and Feelings. There's only one artifact left to find, and all these artifacts will be used to power up the Icarus and automatically give coordinates to the systems, and then it's able to go back to the Wizard's homeworld as an emergency backup plan for the High Council, just in case something like this would happen, which is why the Wizard and High Council was after the Wizard Slayers the entire time. They're trying to get their artifacts back. The final artifact is at White Forest Mountain, and the Xenians have been attacking the mountain for a long time, but the Combines are always able to hold their ground. But just barely. It's pretty much an impasse battle. But with the Wizard Slayers, maybe. Just maybe. The artifacts are also the only things the Combines have to create a portal to the Wizard's homeworld, because each of their ships don't have light speed technology, but wormhole generators. But since the Citadel portal got destroyed, all their wormhole generators stopped working, but the artifacts can power up the Icarus. Once the Wizard Slayers have their final artifact, they can go to the Arctic Black Hole Generator, the last of the 3 generators Chief has yet to shut down, because he shut down the last 2 in Season 3 of Combine Rampage, one in the desert, one in the woods by White Forest. In that generator place, though, there's an energy tube that can take the Wizard Slayers to a satellite where they can take a shuttle to the Icarus, take control of it, and get to the wizard's homeworld and destroy the Wizard of Hope once and for all and end his tyranny. That was until a hologram machine smashes through the glass in the launch room where everyone was talking, and in came a pre-recorded message from the Wizard of Hope in an attempt to scare the Wizard Slayers into giving up. That's when the Wizard Slayers found out that this means the base is going to be attacked soon. Robert takes Chief down to the armory to get his weapons. However, once they get down the elevator, it blows up as a barrage of Combine mortars attack the base. Explosions echo throughout the base, and that's when Chief and Robert have to hurry. As they run, the radios go nuts because rebels are struggling with the fight outside, and Cortana is trying to assist them with strategy suggestions. The rest of the Wizard Slayers have to help them out. Chief's first enemy he's fighting is with a head crab that pops out of the vents, in which he just uses his fists to kill it, which impresses Robert. Once Chief and Robert get to the armory, he has trouble remembering the code to get in. That's when Chief uses his strength to get the blast door open forcibly. He opens it slightly, and Robert squeezes through. He throws Chief his magnum, and Robert tries to get his other weapons, but his armor shortens out and is unable to hold the blast door anymore. Robert gets trapped on the other side, but he's able to tell Chief that he'll be able to get his weapons through vending machines that have been appearing out of thin air, because they all seem connected. Chief starts up fighting some head crabs and zombies. The zombies in Combine Rampage Conclusion come in different models, not just their white shirt model, but blue shirt ones, rebel ones, medic ones. I got a zombie pack that has different models from the Gmod workshop. Same with Zombines, they come with the elites, the guards, and shotgunner models. Just before Chief gets down to the barracks, he also starts fighting some Metro cops that made it to the base and are tasked with killing refugees down there. It's up to Chief to kill all the cops, and he meets up with Greg, Sheckley, and Laura, who help him out. Down in the barracks, Chief is tasked to rescue all the refugees and take them to the rally point. Chief fights Metro cops, manhacks, and turrets as he rescues some refugees who are fighting them. After Chief rescues the second group, the lights go out, and it is reported that a Combine mortar has destroyed the power generators in the base, and only emergency power is working. That is when more zombies start to show up with the cops. Chief finds a Circus of Values machine from BioShock that appears right in front of him that laughs and says, "Feel your cravings at the Circus of Values!" And Chief is able to grab his assault rifle from there. The vending machine here works different from BioShock. It doesn't cost money, but since Chief only can carry 2 weapons at a time, and he's able to get grenades out of them too, he can be able to switch his weapons in the vending machine itself, basically. But right now, he only has just the Magnum and assault rifle. The rest of his weapons haven't been unlocked yet. Basically, treating this series as a video game of sorts, not just a series that you watch. He'll also find the El Ammo Banito up ahead, where he can find ammo for all his weapons. After Chief rescues the third and final group, a blast door opens, pushing Chief down. His group starts fighting the incoming elite Metro cops that come out of there. One elite cop jumps on top of Chief and gets his stun stick out and ready, but Chief is able to punch the crap out of him to get him off. Chief gets back on his feet, starts fighting more cops, manhacks, turrets, some scanners, and an active Combine APC that bursts through. This is basically the boss of the level, and Chief's gotta get to the APC where he can jump on top of it and throw grenades inside. After the APC gets destroyed, it blows up. And through a window above him, he finds some mysterious figures. It's not the G-Man, but they're wearing yellowish beige suits. It's a guy and a gal, both ginger. He has no idea who they are. They appear throughout the series. Cortana asks Chief, Griggs, and Sheckley, and Laura to get the remaining refugees and themselves to the rally point, which leads to the next video, basically. and that is Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Operation Retrieval. The scripts are starting to become a little long, showing a lot of gameplay stuff, so I'm going to try to shorten out on some details in these chapters. Like, I don't have to talk about every single fight of what happens, but, I mean, I'll do what I can. Some of them just seem pretty interesting to me. So this chapter starts off with Master Chief, Laura, Griggs, and Sheckley, who meet up with Patrick and some of the rest of the crew in the area where Gordon Freeman entered and exited the base right before the Strider battle. Patrick tells them that Kleiner and Magnuson would need some volunteers to stay behind and watch over the evacuation convoy. And so Griggs and Sheckley offer to go, and this is pretty much the last time we see them in the series, just in case Griggs and Sheckley appear in Half-Life 3, since they're pretty cool characters in Episode 2 and might be popular enough to come back. Jinmu also lets her 2 children watch over the convoy. The 2 baby guards that always follow Jinmu, and this is pretty much the last time we see them in the series too. After Jonathan gives Cortana's chip to Chief, and he collects his stuff from the Circus of Values in El Emo Benito, he leaves the base with Arbiter, Rachel, and Vincent. Throughout the series, Chief is going to have 3 or 4 of the other Wizard Slayers following him. Other times, it's going to be other characters, completely randomized depending on the story. For example, later in the chapter, we would have Jonathan, Marco, and Michelle. All would have interesting quotes while following Chief and killing enemies. Unfortunately, there's so many characters, so they won't have a lot of character development. Limited to just dialogue, but there would be some development for certain characters in here that pop up. 4 of them, 5 if you include Cortana, wandered through the aftermath of Gordon's Strider battle before launching the rocket, seeing the leftover Strider. Wow, what's this typo? That's right here. Seeing the leftover Strider debris and Hunter corpses and destroyed buildings, and then climb to the cliffside by the water tower, where they start fighting Xenian creatures such as Hound Eyes, Bull Squids, Panther Eyes, and pretty much any kind of head crab and zombie. Up to another cliff edge, Chief knew he couldn't climb it, but then a gene bank from Bioshock immediately shows up. And inside is his jetpack power-up, which will help him get over the mountain. Throughout the fighting in this chapter, Combine combat starts off very limited to just some soldiers, scanners, turrets, and manhacks left over from the siege. It's mostly Xenian combat, including antlines too. Also throughout the chapter, Chief starts to slowly gain back his weapons, the SMG, shotgun, sniper rifle, and they would all be in the and of course, there'll be ammo for all of them in the El Emo Benito machine. Of course, Chief can only carry 2 weapons at a time, as I keep saying, so he could switch them at any time he's at the Circus of Values. Plus, more power-ups would show up at the gene bank, such as faster sprint, regeneration, armor lock, bubble shield, extra ammo space, etc. You know, random power-ups, some stuff that appeared in Halo, they would show up in the gene banks. All these are basically found by Robert and put into the machines. That's basically Robert's use in the story. Finding Chief's lost weapons and basically being a second Cortana. He doesn't really do much combat here though. After a while, Cortana starts to detect something large coming. And out of nowhere, a Combine cruiser shows up. This one is the Ether, an advisor and controlled ship that would appear a few times in Skinner-life. It's basically Malcolm's personal cruiser, after the Pegasus abandoned Malcolm and the others before they were able to return the ship while riding Dawn. Anywho, after the ship shows up, Combine presence in the area starts to increase with a ton of dropships and gunships flying overhead. Hunters start to show up in combat too, more soldiers, elites, and after Chief starts fighting an antline guard, a gunship shows up and spots Chief, but unfortunately Chief is not able to destroy it because his rocket launcher wasn't found by Robert yet. Luckily, the gunship gets shot down by another rocket, revealed to be from Glenn. From the distance, the Aether charges up. It's like a beam underneath it, like a giant plasma beam of some sort, a dark energy beam, and it destroys something in the distance, like right on the belly of the ship. It is revealed that the cruiser has destroyed White Force Base. So Patrick suggests for Chief to go underground to a Combine outpost. Chief does so and steals some data from the inside, basically to cause a distraction while the rest of the Wizard Slayers go into hiding as Combine presence start to increase. Then Chief returns to the surface by nightfall and gets chased by a Combine helicopter. Arbiter uses his gravity gun to help destroy it and by throwing its bombs back, and that's the end of that chapter. Chapter 3, City 8. Now that we have some time to get to know the Wizard Slayers, here's our first chapter featuring the Wizard and High Council. Remember when General Ivan had a list of things that the council members a list of things they have to do from the Wizard of Hope before he fled? Of course you don't. Who does? Well, one of them involves ending the Zenian threat in City 8. If you don't remember, Griggs and Sheckley were from City 8, and then there was a huge Zenian outbreak. And also Arbiter was spawned over there, and that's when Race X was debuted in the series for the first time. Though they don't appear in this chapter. It's just Zenians. The chapter starts off with a shot of the Combine cruiser, the Prometheus, in the sky, with a swarm of dropships flying down to the city below. Inside one of the dropships is Chancellor David, Generals Ivan, Justin, Maxwell, Jenkins, and Cipriani. General Ivan explains that the Wizard of Hope's list contains this. The first thing on the list is to destroy the portal that brought Race X to the world, but that's already been done already. Number 2 is eliminate the Zenian threat at White Forest Mountain, something that the advisors are already doing, basically help them save time. Number 3, eliminate the Zenian threat in City 8, which is what they're doing now. Number 4, hunt down the Wizard Slayers and reclaim the lost artifacts. And then number 5, take the Icarus to the Wizard of Hope to send reinforcements and wipe out the Resistance, and by extension, the advisors themselves. Basically a Combine civil war right here. The Wizards have their own plans with Earth, and they don't wish to have the advisors take it from them. Since White Forest Mountain is more dangerous than City 8, Maxwell believes it wouldn't be worth the effort to go to White Forest Mountain to take out the Wizard Slayers and retrieve the artifacts, since they have the feeling they'll be heading to the polar base that will take them to the satellite, which is where they can set up an ambush for them. Help give two birds one stone to play with, you know? That's my expression for it. So for their mission, to end the Zenian threat in City 8, they must take out the Tor. Not a tour guide kind of Tor. It's a high-ranking Vortigaunt with a powerful staff, an enemy come from Half-Life 1. They are very rare to find on Earth, and they must eliminate the one inside the Nexus. Before they can do that, though, they must lower the Zenian threat by initiating a lockdown, which turns on the force fields and such. So anywho, they go over to a nearby outpost after the dropship drops them off, so they can turn on the lockdown. Manta rays float the skies as they drop off Vortigaunt, Zenian grunts, and controllers for the council members to fight. The council dudes have the city's civil protection assisting them in the fight, with the help of some cops and one APC so far. When they get to the outpost, they find out the systems have been hacked, and turret defenses are now against the council members, and the force fields would only allow rebels and Zenians through, something similar to human error. Each of the council members have their own specific power-ups. Jenkins has Berserk. He can move really fast and get stronger for each kill he does. He then reaches the control room and opens the door so Ivan can initiate the lockdown. Although he decides to stay behind and hold the post and monitor the area in hopes it would assist the others. And Cipriani calls out for his chicken shit, in which Ivan does not hesitate to admit. When the rest of them head back inside, they find the CPs that followed them that are having trouble with a Gargantua. Don't worry, the Garg isn't Jimmu. The council members don't have enough firepower to take this current Gargantua down, so they just run. They escape down an alley and head to a locked Combine door sabotaged by rebels. If any of them touches the control panel, it would consist of a lethal electric shock. Luckily, Cipriani has a temporary invulnerability device to help protect him from such a situation. Cipriani turns his power on, puts his finger in the box, and the power surge causes the door to open. But it also temporarily surges his power from his armor, shutting it down, so he wouldn't be able to be invulnerable any longer than that, at least for the time being. So that forces the others to have to protect him a little bit till his armor gets restored. But Cipriani's a strong council member. He's got the mafia blood in him. He can handle anything. The Bioshock vending machines appear in some places throughout the chapter, but the council dudes cannot use them. In fact, they try to use an El Amo Benito machine, and then Cipriani gets pissed and kicks it, only to have it laugh at them, and it spills out an active grenade. So it makes you think that they're sentient, you know? At times, when the council dudes are not fighting the sentient Xenians, they also fight Xenian animals. The animals such as the Hound Eyes and Bull Squids. And the underground areas are filled with zombies, including Go Gnomes from opposing force, who make their debut in this chapter. A couple of the council dudes start bickering at each other, making like, what? These dudes don't look like gnomes. And it's like, no, they're not gnomes. It's Go Gnomes. You gotta have the go there. That's the difference. But it's not all fighting in this chapter or in this series in particular. There's some quiet moments too. Moments where you just walk around areas, it's quiet, you enjoy the ambience. Sometimes it's there for suspense, sometimes it's there just to have a little break from the fighting. Hey, even Doom Guy needs to have a break from all the fighting and have a moment of silence. Just, at least, even if it's just for a second. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not use the Combine Cruiser to destroy the city? Well, Justin suggests that. And Chancellor David says that the Wizard of Hope's orders are very specific to the letter. Contain the infestation. They must take back the city. Otherwise, it's less Combine-controlled areas for the Wizard of Hope to continue his research and rebuild. And right after, a pre-recorded message from the Wizard of Hope appears, giving his propaganda speeches via hologram. He says, during the hologram, even at the bleakest nights, even in the stormiest of days, even when fire consumes, there is a matter of hope that lies within us. Take heed, my transhuman brothers and sisters. With the slight humanity you have within you, do not completely eradicate it. It's hope that makes the resistance stronger. Use that weapon against them. With the small bit of sentient within the Combine troops, the Wizard of Hope hopes to give inspiration to them. The Wizard of Hope's holograms appear throughout the chapter, and other chapters containing Wizarded Troopers. So basically, we're not going to be seeing the hologram at least until chapter 7, because up to chapter 6, it's going to be just Advisor and Combines. During the fight, they find a Xenian grunt alpha named Digin talking to a rebel about his plans to ambush the High Council dudes, and that they must protect the Tor at all cost. The next part is stealth, basically. Maxwell has to disable a hacked Combine camera. Actually, there's quite a few of these, so it doesn't activate force fields or turrets, causing a local lockdown, because not all areas are Combine controlled, basically. Ivan's area is now, but not the entire city. Maxwell has a camouflage armor ability to keep himself hidden from any patrols and the cameras. While Maxwell sneaks through enemy lines, nearby Zenian grunts have this conversation I believe is very important to note. Man, shit, your breath stinks. Huh? Did you say something? No, you must be hearing things. All I heard was pure silence ever since Neolith 2 got destroyed. He caused nothing but headaches. Hey, there's no way to speak your former leader. Why did we join the humans again? I know why the Vortigaunt wimps did, since they were just slaves, but what about us? We had no choice. We want the Combine gone, and we're trapped here, so what other choice did we have? Neolith would have never approved. The thieves they are! The thieves! We were given opportunity to take back what is ours, and we took it. And now we're paying the price and being trapped on this miserable rock. We shall have salvation soon, my brother. For now, we must be patient. I can sense pleasurable things in our future. Pleasurable things. Back with Maxwell, he disables the security, and the rest of the council members begin their assault and start fighting more of the sentient Zenians. Some Vortigaunts even tamed some Panther Eyes to assist them. The council dudes fight them, and they even fight some treacherous Metro cops who joined the resistance when they were found out to be on the winning side of the conflict in City 8. We can tell that the resistance and Zenians are winning, especially with the Gargantua on their side, and Manta Rays airstriking powerful Combine units like Striders, and since there are more Manta Rays than gunships, they usually gang up on them. Gunships may be more powerful than the Manta Rays, but sometimes it's quantity over quality in this case. The council dudes make it to the front of the Nexus, but the way is sealed shut, so they have to hold their position until General Ivan can hack the system from his end. In the meantime, Manta Rays drop off more Zenians and even some baby Gargs, until eventually the Mama shows up. They run out of rockets midway battle with the Gargantua, thinking that it's the end of them. Reinforcements show up and actually destroy the Garg. Combine guards from HL2 Beta, as a matter of fact. Ivan eventually gets the doors open. Of course, there's a lot of Zenians in there in such tight quarters, so Justin's special ability is giving out a holographic decoy to get everyone's attention in there, so the others can ambush them. After fighting some Zenians and hacked Combine machinery and treacherous Metro cops, they have their final battle with the Tor and defeat it. They end up capturing Digin as well, in hopes of getting information out of him, but Digin just taunts them, so Ivan just ends up executing him. Digin is an unstoppable grunt with his brother Gaul, but he's busy with the attack with White Forest Mountain, so alone, Digin didn't stand a chance. Oh yeah, Ivan eventually caught up with them in mid-battle, I forgot to mention. You should see these dudes bicker at each other. I wrote a script up to mid-chapter 4 before I decided to do this instead. So when I wrote the chapter when I wrote the script for chapter 3, oh man, it's hilarious. Just love all the bickering that goes on between all the characters. Well, anywho, the council members pat themselves on the back, not literally though, on a job well done. The Zenians in the city are either all retreated, surrendered, or died ever since the deaths of the Tor and Digin. So City 8 has been fully reclaimed by the Universal Union, and that's another thing on the Wizard of Hope's list, crossed off. The High Council members return to their ship to prepare for the next assignment. Ivan even states how he wishes Oliver was there to assist him. This is the last time we see the High Council members until Chapter 7. So that's basically it for them for this video, but when we get to Act 2, we'll be seeing a lot more of them. This is basically just their prologue chapter. Chapter 4, Nightfall. On the way to the mountain, Chief must locate a nearby observatory and destroy it, since it contains valuable rebel research. To reference Halo 4, Cortana even says in this chapter that she still has another 4 years until rampancy, in which Chief asks what that is, but she just says it's unimportant. Throughout the chapter, Chief and the others start to notice strange floating anomalies and objects just appearing and disappearing out of thin air, some conveniently placed to block out incoming enemies, or even items just showing up to assist Chief in his battles. Cortana tries to analyze them, but she can't really explain what they are, and might think Chief would consider her crazy if she mentioned. She eventually says that they're tears in reality. After destroying the observatory, Chief makes his way to the aqueducts of a nearby town known as Alpine, filled with Xenians such as hound eyes, bull squids, zombies including gnomes and antlions, and there have been an unnatural amount of head crabs in the area. But not many artillery canisters were detected, which makes Cortana suspicious. Combine forces are told to begin overwhelmed by head crabs. However, not many Combine forces were in the area, other than some dropships flying by, one even carrying a Strider. Cortana even detects some strange white splatter on the ground. Shut up, pervs, not that kind of splatter, come on! And many dead Combine forces. On Combine radio chatter, they talk about getting overwhelmed by not only head crabs, but the biggest head crab they ever seen. I'm sure you understand where I'm getting at, because eventually, Chief ends up meeting and fighting the Gonarch. Some Metro cops show up at first to give the audience a perspective of what she's capable of before finally chasing Chief. Chief wouldn't have stood much of a chance in that tight area in the sewers if it weren't for the tears in reality that give Chief the ammo and health he needs, including a mounted Combine Gust turret that's only around for a short time before disappearing. The tears are all temporarily, though. There were even some tears that brought up some Xenian grunts and Vortigons, which help provide a distraction to at least the baby head crabs that pour out of the Gonarch's bowls. The Gonarch eventually dies, and Father Anders shows up to give Chief a hand by offering him an exit from the sewers and up to the streets above. With him, also Rachel, Jonathan, and Glenn, with the Gonarch dead, Combine presence starts to grow. The Ether Cruiser appears in this chapter, but it's just a background element, really. It's not really doing anything. First, the Combine start shooting down artillery canisters full of man-hacks or roller mines. After the fight, they meet up with a wounded rebel that says they have a message for the Wizard Slayers. To make sure not to... but before he could say anything, he gets shot. Now is another one of those suspenseful, quiet parts with only suspenseful music and footsteps and objects crashing and being heard in the background, plus some snarky comments from Glenn and Rachel, with Jonathan being a bit more frightened and Anders trying to give a sense of confidence to the squad. That is when they get ambushed by Combine assassins. It's a close fight with even an assassin tackling Glenn, but Anders saves him. In fact, it shows in this part that Father Anders, despite being a priest, is pretty good at fighting. Anders eventually reveals that he used to be a black op who was assigned to cleaning up Black Mesa, though he started to regret his actions and eventually found God and became a priest at the City 17 Catholic Church. But now with the church gone, Anders is now a soldier again, bringing the fear of God within the Combine. This is pretty much where the script ends, so from here on out, I'm only making it up from here. Robert states on the radio that he found Chief's invisibility power-up and stored it in the gene bank. Patrick on the radio states that he and the others are arriving at the location with supply trucks, and they must clean up the area for their arrival. Combine forces show up along with a Strider. Nobody has rockets, so they must hide from the Strider until something can be found to take it down, basically. So, they can only take out the soldiers first. Luckily, Robert states on the radio that he's found Chief's rocket launcher and stored it in the Circus of Values. Father Anders, Rachel, Jonathan, and Glenn offer to distract the Strider while Chief goes and gets his launcher. He gets it and finally takes down the first of the many Striders he has to fight before the series ends. Arbiter eventually joins the battle with Laura, Vincent, and Patrick, along with some vehicles that were commandeered to help with the attack on Alpine. Patrick explains that Alpine is a town where civil protection holds a tighter grip on than City 17 since it's smaller. It's where their newbie CPs start off to test their skills and test their loyalty to the Combine. But with City 17 destroyed, it's now the headquarters of the remaining City 17 CPs. So even the pros are in there. They must take the town and use it as a base for the attack of White Forest Mountain. Before they could do that, though, they must protect the trucks against the zombie attack so they can hack the gate of the security checkpoint of Alpine to open. Once it opens, they're going to hide the trucks at a nearby rest stop just before Alpine, and they're going to rest before taking the town in the morning. Chapter 5, Alpine. So the 5th chapter starts with the Wizard Slayers driving the vehicles, such as pickup trucks and supply trucks, so they can offer relief supplies to the citizens of Alpine. But they already get ambushed by Metro cops. It's a pretty intense battle with the CPs, with APCs, manhack scanners, hunters, and even roller mines, gunships, dropships, and helicopters flocking the skies. Soldiers don't really appear in this chapter that much, since it's mostly just CPs. Well, the first half of the chapter, that is. In fact, this is the last chapter containing actual Metro cops as enemies. In fact, it's a civil war between CPs in town because of some of the newbie cops decided to betray the Combine because they know the Resistance is going to win, or at least they think they know. Some even had second thoughts when they didn't have a good feeling about beating civilians for no reason. And there were many of the cops were in prison too. And some were even about to get executed. Newbie cops have their own models in here, so we can tell the difference between them and the enemy cops. There would even be some ally APCs, manhacks, turrets, roller mines, and scanners, and all of them, with the traitor cops. So Chief's mission now is to take out the Metro Cop Chief at the command center. Once she's dead, the remaining CPs will either surrender or go rogue. Either way, it would be the end of the City 17 civil protection officially. Chief and Arbiter would find Laura, Owen, and Michelle over at a nearby strip club so they can commence the attack. And Michelle's having a really good time there. Once Chief heads over there, Michelle was having pretty much a real good time on the pool as Owen and Laura watched with glee. Chief, Arbiter, and Cortana felt awkward to find him in that scenario. I mean, Arbiter being an alien and all, Cortana being female, and Chief pretty much just being a soldier. Probably controls his inner desires. So of course they would be in an awkward situation, you know? But either way, it was time to commence the attack at the command center. Lots of fighting between the strip club and the command center. There's even a Combine mortar protecting the command center up ahead. Striders and gunships and APCs throughout the battle, but they get defeated by the other Wizard Slayers that appear throughout the area. Some even rescuing citizens and rescuing captured traitor cops too. Chief and his squad make it to the command center to meet the Metro Cop Chief, who has a Captain Phasma-like attitude. She activates some force fields between Chief and the rest of the squad, so Chief would have to face her alone, basically. The others have been locked out. She doesn't hesitate to order her cremators to execute some traitor cops that were in the room with her. She doesn't like to play fair either, since she has turrets protecting her and her cremators. She starts to give chase to, I'm going to call her Phasma. That's not her official name in here, but that's what I want to call her. And there are many loyal cops and cremators between Chief and her. Glenn cries out on the radio that the Aether Cruiser is getting closer to town and glassing it with its beam, the same beam that was used to destroy White Forest Base. Phasma even knows that it's getting closer. Cortana wonders why it's just blasting everything without hesitation. Chief finally corners Phasma at the roof of a building with nowhere to go but downward to the battle below, 8 stories high. Chief orders Phasma to surrender, but Phasma is aware of her fate. The Combine are going to destroy the town and everyone in it, including her and the CPs. But she accepts the fate for the will of her Combine overlords. The cruiser is getting closer and closer. Phasma tells him that there's nowhere left to run, and they're all gonna die. But just then, out of the blue, a second Combine cruiser shows up. But this one isn't blue like the Aether or the Prometheus. This one is like a greenish yellow. The yellow cruiser begins firing at the Aether, and the Aether immediately shuts off its destruction beam as pieces start falling out of it. The Aether begins firing at the yellow cruiser, and the yellow cruiser begins shooting shells down into the streets below. As Chief gets distracted, Phasma climbs onto the ledge of the roof, and she tells Chief that the resistance will fail, and Earth itself. If not by Combine hands, then by any other alien organization that attacks next. And then she jumps off the ledge and falls to her death. Chief returns inside the building, which is a hotel, basically, and starts going down the stairs floor by floor as radio chatter begins to go haywire and go staticky. Something is jamming the signal. Cortana attempts to reconnect, but she finds out information about the yellow cruiser. It's actually a Combine cruiser known as the Pegasus. It's the same cruiser from Scanner-Life where Sean and the others had their trial and got banished from the Combine. But then, before Malcolm could return to the ship after disposing of the Scanner-Life characters, it disappears for some odd reason. We find out why in a bit. As Chief gets lower and lower to the floors, going downstairs, he hears explosions, screaming, and agony outside, and some familiar sounds of enemy from his past. When Chief gets lower, out comes some pit drones and baby Voltigores. Race X has returned. When Chief gets to the first floor, the hotel lobby explodes, revealing an adult Voltigore. When he gets out of the hotel, more artillery canisters start to get shot down from the Pegasus, and when the canisters reach the ground, they explode acid and disintegrating the entire canister inside containing more pit drones. Robert says from the radio that he found Chief's flamethrower and put it in the Circus of Values. The other Wizard Slayers are fending off against Race X, but they're slaughtering other rebels and traitor cops pretty easily. Chief meets up with the others at the Haven that some of the traitor cops are using it as a base, basically a fallout bunker that would protect everyone and can be used as a staging point for the attack of the mountain. The bunker is located at the ruined part of the city that the Aether destroyed. Cortana finishes analyzing the Pegasus, and it turns out Race X has hijacked the ship and has covered the entire hull of their fungus, which is protecting the ship from the incoming fire of the Aether. The Pegasus starts sending down hijacked dropships, and even gunships have been taken control by Race X. More canisters get dropped, and Chief starts fighting shock troopers now. This isn't Chief's only problem. The Aether sends Combine forces into the city to help drive out both Race X and the Resistance. They'd have to take the city back the old-fashioned way, because the Aether can't use its belly beam and have the shields up at the same time. So, basically, the ship routed its power to its shields to protect it from Ship X's fire. The Wizard Slayers are basically calling the Pegasus Ship X now. Chief meets up with Arbiter, Marco, Glenn, and Rachel so they can make their way to the bunker. They pass through some ruined buildings containing acid pods filled with shock roaches that ambush them. After fending them off, on the radio, Owen mentions that he, Laura, and Michelle are getting pretty close to the base, and Robert tells them to meet him outside because he has a new toy he just made that needs testing. He's been researching the tears and created a small device that would help open them. Says a couple of twins gave him some instructions on how to make it, but he doesn't know where they went. They just disappeared. And he didn't know who they were. Unfortunately, though, things start to get complicated after a giant yellow-green pod falls from Ship X and crash lands behind a building. As Chief and his team continue on, fighting Combine and Race X, they start to hear screaming over the radio, mentioning something that keeps popping out of the ground and shooting lasers from its eye. Some kind of worm creature. Owen, Michelle, and Laura mention that they're at a nearby roof, firing at the creature from above, and can't risk going down a street level with Robert. Cortana mentions that Chief and his team are close, and they'll get the device. When they reach the rally point where Robert is, he gives Chief the device, and Chief tests it out by opening up some nearby tears containing a Circus of Values machine and another containing a gene bank. Robert mentions that he found the armor lock ability and put it inside. Just then, the ground starts to quake again, and right from the middle of the ground, out popped out a pit worm. Weapons don't seem to penetrate it. But luckily, there was a conveniently placed tear which contains a crane holding a container filled with toxic waste. Chief climbs up to the crane and detaches it, and the container falls onto the pit worm, which barely harmed it, but then it started leaking toxic waste, which seriously wounded it. Another conveniently placed tear appears containing a box full of toxic barrels. Arbiter uses his gravity gun to shoot the barrels to the worm, which really does the job well. The pit worm is pretty much almost finished, but not quite yet. Another tear shows up containing a pipe that aims directly into the hole where the pit worm popped out of. Chief heads over there and turns the valve, but it breaks off, causing Chief to get confused as to why the tear showed up in the first place. Chief uses the tear device again, which out pops another fresh valve. And Chief turns the valve, and toxic waste spills out of the pipe, pouring into the hole and burning the pit worm. The pit worm collapses and dies from the toxic waste flush. Everybody cheers. Up in the sky, the Aether disappears. Cortana explains that the Aether fled, leaving behind the remaining Combine forces. Chief is welcomed into the base as they discuss their next move to attack the mountain. With Phasma dead, there will no longer be a CP problem, and the traitor cops decide to join the Resistance. However, they decide to not help with the attack of the mountain because there's still some remaining citizens and traitor cops that are still trapped in other places. More and more of Alpine starts to get infested by Race X, but luckily, Combine forces start to fall back to the mountain. Manta rays flock the skies and start electrocuting the ground, taking out nearby Race X forces that start to get closer and closer to everybody else. The Zenians offer to help the traitor cops out, but can't spare too many units because they need to help the Wizard Slayers claim the artifact up in the mountain. Chapter 6, White Forest Mountain. Just outside Alpine, right below the mountain, Chief gets in position along with Michelle, Glenn, Vincent, and Marco to begin the attack on the mountain. Manta rays flock the skies as they fight Combine aircraft. Ship X still floats in the distance. Chief starts climbing up the mountain and fighting Combine forces and Race X on the way to the top, along with some antlines because of the disabled thumpers destroyed by Zenian forces. There are many Combine forces on the way to the top, but luckily they got Vorts, Grunts, Controllers, and even Jimmu herself assistant. That's right, Jimmu the Gargantua. She's helping, and she is badass. They meet up with Jimmu as she shows off her strength against the Combine forces. When the area begins to get snowy, which means closer to the summit, they end up getting attacked by a gunship along with some stronger Combine forces such as elites and hunters. Chief fights the stronger units as Jimmu throws canisters at the gunship, damaging it, until once Jimmu starts climbing a nearby crane. She jumps onto the gunship, causing it to fall down the cliff along with Jimmu. They start falling as the gunship starts crashing. But luckily, a Vort mentions that Jimmu survived the crash, but would take some time to catch up with the rest of them. Chief and the others would end up going to an underbridge area where Chief is suddenly face to face with a Combine helicopter, which destroys part of the bridge, separating Chief from the others. The chopper was simple to take down once Chief had his launcher, but on the way to the Circus of Values, the chopper would use rockets to destroy parts of the bridge to make it more difficult for him. But luckily, Chief had his dimensional device to open the tears to help him across. After taking down the chopper, Chief finds a passageway into the mountain, where it's pretty much the eye of the storm, and a chance for Chief to collect his thoughts and listen to radio chatter from the rest of the attack force. Apparently, Race X has been more of an issue with the attack force than the Combine, with the only Combine issues mostly being air forces, but they're mostly distracted by the Zenian manta rays. Cortana starts to remember when Chief used to be randomly teleported to different areas around the world thanks to the pit drone from City 17 that gave him the problem, but they're glad it wore off. That is, until a trap door opens, sending Chief through a vent chute. He grabs onto a nearby part sticking out and notices down below some fans that are turned on high, which are basically like blades that'll come to pieces at that rate. Chief begins to believe the random teleportation would have been useful in that situation. Cortana reminds him that he's basically a tank with the armor he's wearing, and the fans won't cut him to pieces, but just to be safe, Cortana would boost Chief's shields to protect him. He falls into the blades and pretty much destroys them, but not without sacrificing his shields too. Cortana warns him that it will take a little longer to recharge the shields because of all the power she used. In fact, she can't read any of the power signs in his suit, other than some emergency powers that only allow Chief to move his limbs in the armor. Not even his heads-up display was working. So, until the power gets restored, Chief is basically like any other soldier now, with the same amount of health. Luckily for him, it was mostly Zenian animals in the area, such as head crabs, antlines, hound eyes, and bull squids, with the occasional swarm of manhacks. In fact, there's a whole Zenian nest within the mountain, with little penis-shaped lights and head crab-shaped trees, and even those little peckers. I think some of the bigger peckers appeared down there too. Since they're at the bottom of the mountain base, some of the Combine's hazardous materials get disposed down there, which means some of the Zenians get mutated with new variants of hound eyes and head crabs and antlines and bull squids, only seen in this chapter. Cortana starts to actually feel bad for the Zenian creatures, which gives Chief a plan to help attack the base. Pretty soon, Chief makes it to the upper parts of the mountain, to the Combine base, and starts fighting the forces inside, including some Combine guards, first appeared in Chapter 3, now fought for the first time. The base is huge, so even some Striders appear throughout the base. The base is also a factory, and is basically the new base of operations for Sector 17 after the destruction of the Citadel, so the remaining City 17 forces are in the base, including some left behind forces after the Aether fled. Arbiter met with Chief inside, saying that the others are at other parts of the base, so it's just them for now. Chief and Arbiter make their way over to a transport system so it could take them closer to where Cortana found the artifact, inside a huge vault near a Strider factory. Before they could do that, however, Chief has to make his way to a nearby control center to release the hatches that are keeping the Xenian mutants downstairs. Chief thought it was a good idea to free them. Cortana asks him whether it was just to cause a distraction or cause he pitied them. Arbiter explains that reasons don't matter as long as the deed is done. I couldn't agree more with that. Afterwards, the three of them make their way to the transport, and when they got to the transport, they have limited movement. Oh yeah, Chief has his shields back on at this point, so he'll be fine. But with their limited movement inside the transport, they're still able to shoot the Combines on the other side, some fighting Xenian forces and even the mutants. Good news is, the Combines are pretty much having a hard time gripping into the base. Bad news is, it's not going to get any easier to get to the vault because there's also the Xenian mutants all over the place. Cortana mentions that Race X cannot make their way inside the base, so they're currently safe from them. Chief must protect himself and Arbiter from the forces shooting onto the transport. At the same time, use the tear device to fix broken tracks as Combines try to stop them from going through. Broken tracks, some collapsed debris and such, stuff like that. Really makes use of the tear device. Once the transport reaches its destination, Chief and Arbiter make their way towards some caverns to get to the vault. While fighting some Combines along the way there, they pass the vault to get to the control center, and around the area are Striders all over, getting their machinery tested, similar to the turret production lines in Portal 2. Defective Striders, of course, get taken to the incinerator. When they get to the control center, Cortana realizes that the controls are in complete lockdown, and there's no way to bypass them without a Combine key code known only to a local Combine general in charge of the mountain base. Unfortunately, the general lies dead on the ground with a shotgun on the ground, suggesting that the general killed himself. There would have been a view of the general doing that from the factory down below, seen through a window. Knowing there's no way to hack the program, the best way to open the vault is to destroy it, causing a chain reaction from the destruction of the Strider factory equipment would either cause the vault's destruction or an emergency opening sequence. To do this, they'll need to use the Striders against the equipment. So this leads Chief to going downstairs to the factory, where he's about to start up a boss battle with an Elite Strider. It's not so much of an actual boss battle, since Elite Striders are going to appear throughout the series, uncommonly, but it's still going to happen. The difference between a regular Strider and the Elite Strider is that the Elite Strider uses the Fast Cannon AI from HL2 Episode 1. If you want to see the difference, check out this video clip I'm about to show you. As you can see, that AI doesn't come with the Elite Strider. It's just a Strider with another skin. I used the console commands to make the Strider do this. Try it yourself. It's actually pretty fun to mess with the console commands. On the Valve developer commentary website, it teaches you how to adjust the NPC AIs. Try it out. It's really fun, especially in Gmod. You can even do it in plain old HL2 if you want. Alright, well, anywho, Chief couldn't destroy the Strider yet, but using the Strider to destroy the factory equipment. Once the gullible son of a bitch does that, the Elite Strider pretty much gets destroyed by the destruction. Thanks to the destruction of the factory, a giant hole appears with access to the vault. Chief and Arbiter head inside, just to be ambushed by a bunch of stealing turrets, roller mines, and manhacks, but not until more explosions cause the destruction of the turrets, leaving Chief and Arbiter to fight the other machines. And then some Combine assassins come in and try to finish them off, but of course they don't do a good job either. Located in the display case in the middle of the vault, Chief finds the artifact and picks it up. But unfortunately, due to carrying the artifact, Chief can only use one-handed weapons like the Magnum and SMG. He can't use grenades either, but luckily he has Arbiter there to protect him. Unfortunately, the way out gets blocked by fire and debris from the destroyed factory, leaving them trapped inside the vault. Chief can handle the fumes, but Arbiter would for sure suffocate. Luckily for them, another hole appears in the opposite of the vault door. It's Jimmu! Chief and Arbiter go with Jimmu as she knows the way out of the base, but now that Chief has taken the artifact, Combines get desperate to retrieve it. So they send everything they got at them. APCs, Hunters, Combine Guards, Cremators, so many troops, and of course some more mutated Zenians come as unintentional assistance. Chief is more vulnerable towards them, but Arbiter and Jimmu offer pretty hefty assistance, especially towards the stronger enemies like the APCs and Antline Guards. Not even a Strider could stop them. Jimmu and Arbiter work together to take it down as Chief watched them as he held the artifact. They all escaped the base and met up with the rest of the team outside. Patrick was talking to a Zenian grunt Alpha, Gaul. He feels quite weaker ever since the death of his brother, as he can feel their bond breaking. Alpha twins are usually much stronger than the average grunt together because of how genetically connected they are, but if one dies, a side effect of the connection will cause Gaul to die pretty soon. But he would do all he could to assist in the Wizard Slayer's mission before his passing. Now that the Combine Mountain base has been disabled ever since the destruction of the factory, causing chain reactions all over the base, and with Chief having the final artifact for the Icarus, the Zenians can join the Wizard Slayers on their mission against the Wizard of Hope. Robert has hijacked a Combine dropship, and they're going to head to the polar region for one more important operation until continuing their mission. Rebels in the polar region have located a Combine base used to controlling the weather. Rebel spies say that it's nearly operational and must be taken down. If the Combine control the Earth's weather, it can mean the end times, permanently. Tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, premature volcano eruptions, and mountains turning into volcanoes, including the mountain they're on now. So it was time to leave one snowy region and to head to an even colder snowy region so they can destroy weather control and afterwards finish their mission. Robert has the remaining artifacts with him, so Chief gives him the artifact he has and the collection is complete. So that's the end of Act 1. Pretty fun story so far, but it's going to get even more interesting in the next 2 acts. Can't wait for it. I'm pretty excited for the next one. I don't like leaving work half finished, and even though this isn't a real finale videos to Combine Rampage, you'll at least know the story. I mean, all it is people running around and shooting enemies with the only story being the text on the screen, so what I'm doing now would probably be more tolerated. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Does this bring nostalgia? If you didn't care about Combine Rampage before, are you starting to now that I'm discussing it, rather than just you reading the text? I'll be making 2 more videos, each containing 6 chapters, unless the epilogue chapter doesn't count. In that case, the last one will only have 5. So this brings us to a total of 17 or 18 chapters of the story. Chapters 7 through 12 are next time. See you then, brahs!